Hello everybody, Mike the VA here, and welcome to today's Mike Talks About episode on Killer7. Now, before I start, I'd like to address this one little thing, this one huge important thing. So if you don't want to watch this bit of the video and you want to just go straight to the actual content of the video itself, there'll be a timestamp which you can skip to if you want to skip to that. So yeah, just go ahead and do that. Right, now this little addressing thing. So, I've been working on this video since the beginning of April of 2025, and I want this video out today on June the 9th, 2025, because of course, you know, today is the 20th anniversary of Killer7. Unfortunately, when I came to editing the video, and keep in mind, I had done a lot of prep, I had gotten a whole bunch of assets, I had recorded all of my dialogue, I had a whole script done and ready to go, I'd shot all the live action footage, I'd recorded all the gameplay footage, it was all going great, but when I came to edit it, it was when I was editing the section where I described the gameplay, when my editing software decided to fuck up. Again, because it was the exact same problem I had last year when I was editing the Fame Academy video. Basically, this grey box right here would come up whilst I was editing. And it usually occurred after I'd edited at least a minimum of 10 minutes worth of footage. And yeah, I'd keep on editing and that box would still be there. It was so fucking annoying. And when I decided to do a test produce of a master, the audio balances would just be fucked up. Like, the music levels would be at 0.0 at regular volume, and it would completely overpower my voice, which was also reset to 0.0. And, you know, considering the long section of me talking about the gameplay, as well as when I get on to talk about the story, which also would have been me talking about each chapter individually and making jokes at them, yeah, I just didn't want to go through all that. You know, I just didn't want to remake the whole part, but, you know, re-edit the whole bit, and then split it up into two different video sections, just to accommodate that. And yeah, I didn't want to do that for all of the other sections as well. So I decided, you know what? Fuck you, Cyberlink Power Director 10 or 12, whatever, which is the video editing software that I use to edit my videos. Yeah, I'm just done with doing a big Mike Talks About episode for this type of video. So I could have just completely scrapped the video altogether, but that wouldn't have been fair, you know. I've spent all this time and effort working on this, and, you know, everything's just gone up in smoke just like that. So I've decided to completely redo this video in a sort of podcast form. So you'll get some gameplay footage over my voice just yapping on about the game and all that bollocks. So I do hope you enjoy this video as best as I can possibly make it. And I just want to point out, or at least I just want to say, thank you so much, Grasshopper Manufacture, for making a brilliant game that has shaped my life. You guys really are the absolute best, and Goichi Suda, thank you for giving us great mortals a chance to delve into the insanity of your universe. You are an amazing creator, and, you know, I really admire your body of work. And yeah, I hope your collaboration with Swery goes well. So yeah, with that being said, let's go. Let's get on with the video.
Killer7, one of my personal all-time favourite games, and today, June the 9th, 2025, it celebrates its 20th anniversary. It's a game that has transcended time and aged beautifully into becoming one of the most artistic expressions of pure what-the-fuckery in video game form. But how exactly did this game come to be? Well, to certain viewers of my channel, you may recall that a while back I did a Mike Talks About episode on the Capcom 5. I'll have an annotation up in the corner in case you want to watch it, but if you don't, long story short, these were a quintet of 5 games made by the lads at Capcom that were intended to be exclusive to Nintendo's purple launch box, the GameCube. Of these 5, 3 of them, this, Resident Evil 4 and Beautiful Joe, were ported to other systems, with one of the 3, Resident Evil 4, getting a remake. PN3 remained exclusive to the Cube, and Dead Phoenix was cancelled. This game started its development in 2002, led by acclaimed madman Goichi Suda, or Suda51 if you prefer, at his studio Grasshopper Manufacture. He collaborated with Shinji Mikami, who helped conceive the plot with Suda as well as generally overseeing the project. The intention was to make a game that felt like no other, having a unique visual art style that utilized cel-shaded graphics with deep shading for an appearance that felt like a graphic novel come to life. Put major emphasis on the story, have an eclectic soundtrack filled with pulse-pounding, strange tunes of different varieties, and more importantly, make the gameplay be radically different than what was available on the market at the time, complete with an unconventional control scheme. All of this naturally fit with Suda's ethos of designing his games the way he wanted to, much like the DIY aspects of the punk movement that Suda loves. There are a number of influences that can be seen in the game, from Suda's own experiences as an undertaker, which helped him portray the gruesome depictions of death in the game, to his love of British punk rock music like the Smiths, to watching the 1973 Kinji Fukusaku flick Battles Without Honor and Humanity Hiroshima Deathmatch over and over till the fucking tape wore out. He even went on a media blackout throughout development, intentionally blocking himself from viewing any new piece of media coming out at the time that would potentially give him an idea. Now, this was not smooth sailing for Suda and his team. It would take them 3 years to make the game, and there were a few bumps on the road. Since the game's story was the core of the game's presentation, there was a lot of time spent on developing it, but there were numerous parts that required certain cuts. In fact, Suda himself said the cutscenes were originally intended to be 3 hours in total, but they had to cut it down in order to streamline the development, things like certain character backstories and plot details. There were also several delays to the game, mostly to try and finalize the gameplay, which happened late in development, and also to port the game to PlayStation 2, which would launch day and date with the GameCube version, this being a Capcom 5 game and all. Of these delays, the game's launch in North America was intended to be released on July the 7th, 2005, as a symbolism of the story's political themes, though it ended up being released 2 days earlier. As mentioned earlier, it launched on June the 9th, 2005 in Japan, and later on July 15th, 2005 in Europe. A port to PC via Steam would later release worldwide on November 15th, 2018. By the way, should you want to play this game, I'd recommend playing the PC version, as it has the crispest visuals, enhanced controls with the keyboard and mouse, and some neat quality of life improvements as well. Plus it's cheap, real cheap, and it has some bonus DLC too. All of the gameplay footage you're seeing in this video was recorded from the good old GameCube version as played on a Nintendo Wii, as it still holds up today. And for God's sake, don't play the PS2 version, it sucks shit. It ruined the already stylish visuals, butchered the frame rate, the load times are longer, the controls don't feel right with a PlayStation 2 controller as opposed to the GameCube controller, and if you live in Japan, you have to put up with some unfortunate censorship. Damn you, Sero! And so, with all that in mind, let's take a look at how far this rabbit hole goes down. Now, Killer7 certainly lives up to its advertising claim of being unique, different, and unlike anything else out there. And no more is this evident with its gameplay. Basically, it's a mixture of various things, an on-rails game, an FPS, and a puzzle game. And it blends them together so well it makes the game feel, well, unique. You control each member of the Killer7, also known as the Smith Syndicate, each with their own abilities and powers. But who exactly are these members? Well, we have Dan, the all-round hard-boiled badass. He wields a 6-piece revolver, though he later upgrades to the Demon Gun, which is essentially the same revolver as before, only it fires 12 rounds, has a faster firing rate, and it packs more of a punch. It makes the later levels a bit easier to manage when you're playing as him. Kaide, the shy sniper in a bloodstained dress. She's amazing for long-distance targets, though her reload is painfully slow, so she can be a bit annoying in hectic fights. Coyote, the thief with a revolver. He's basically Dan, but with a slightly stronger fire rate. He can also use his lockpicking skills to open certain doors to access shortcuts to previously explored areas. Con, the blind but speedy punk. And my god is he speedy, you seen how fast he fires his dual pistols? He can also fit through very small corridors, as well as locate sound waves through energy balls. Kevin, the quiet assassin. Notably the only character not to wield a gun, as he wields knives instead. He still packs quite a punch in the damage department though not as much as Mask, the wrestler with dual grenades, easily the strongest of the bunch. He can also remove bits of rubble blocking certain entrances by either banging them with his head or suplexing the fuck out of them. And finally, Garcian, easily the weakest of the bunch, as his silenced pistol doesn't do that much damage. He can revive fallen members though, but we'll get back to that. Of course, with such unique gameplay comes unique controls. Normally in any video game, you move your character with the left analog stick and have the primary button, so A as an example, be tied to a certain command, like jump. But Killer7 says fuck that to any form of convention in character movement. Instead, you hold the A button down to move your character. It feels a bit restrictive, as your character only moves on that one specific predetermined path. Though with how large the levels are, of course you'd want to explore these levels. That's where the junctions come in, as when you reach a certain point in the path, big triangular junctions appear on the screen, allowing you to select which path you want to go on with the analog stick. Once you get the hang of this system, it feels very quick and snappy, and it becomes fun to send your character down these paths. Of course, you can also press B to make your character turn around. Along the way, you'll face off against the game's main enemies, the Heaven Smile. However, they like to cloak themselves within the environment, and it's your job to flush them out. So, how do you do it? Well, this is where the game's FPS mechanics come into play. First, you hold the R trigger to go into first-person mode. If you see a strange invisible monster-looking thing, that's your cue to press the L trigger to scan the environment to reveal the laughing menaces. The main gameplay loop is that you take out these fuckers by sniping their weak spot, as on a random part of their body, a glowing yellow weak spot will be placed there. You simply shoot at that weak spot, and they die. Shooting anywhere else will simply cause them to jolt back a bit before they go down. But watch out, because these are mutated terrorists at the end of the day, and they love exploding on contact, so you have to kill them before they get to you. To make it easier to hit their weak spots, pressing B will allow you to lock on to the target. Reloading your weapons is fast and responsive, as all you do is flick the C-stick in any direction to reload. I love doing it every time I kill a Smile, though I do it to ensure that I have full ammo on the next Smile I face off against. But as I mentioned earlier, Kaide's reload is slow as shit, so it can be pretty annoying when you do it, more so if you're in first person mode, as the animation takes longer than in free move mode. There are a wide variety of Smiles you can face off against, all of which will keep you on your toes throughout your adventure. You have the normal Smiles, of course, but there are also some running ones that make silly noises, armor Smiles, roly-poly Smiles, ball Smiles, poison ones that can get back up if you don't snipe them in their weak spot quickly, bomb heads, and even some huge-ass Smiles. When you kill a Smile, at least in its weak spot, you harvest two types of blood from them, thick and thin blood. The thick blood can be used in a specialized room known as Harmon's Room, where you can use the nearby TV to convert all of your thick blood into serum, so long as the factory is open. You can then use this serum to upgrade your character stats, although they only go up to level 5 in an ordinary playthrough. In upgrading these character stats, you'll learn new abilities that make fights a bit easier, such as slowing an enemy down when you hit them, or even performing a critical move at the right moment, which is always so satisfying to see when it happens. By the way, you can also save your game in Harmon's Room, so long as the girl in the room, Samantha Sitbon, is in her maid uniform. cause if not, all you can do is upgrade your smiths. Back on point, the Thin Blood, meanwhile, is used for two things. One, whenever you get hit, you can restore a little bit of health with a vial of Thin Blood. Two, this will allow you to activate a superpower for that smith with the Y button, though their primary function is to serve as solutions to certain puzzles. Not so with Dan and Mask, as their powers are useful for combat since they can fire fuck-off blasts at their opponents, though Dan likes to shout collateral shot when he does it. As for the rest, Kaide can slit her wrists and summon Mizaru to shatter some barriers or absorb some blood. Coyote can jump to higher places. Con's power allows him to speed up his movement, which helps certain tedious treks be less of a slog, and Kevin can turn himself invisible, where he can easily bypass certain enemies. The only downside to this, though, is that you only have a limited amount of Thin Blood at your disposal, though on normal difficulty, you can hold a maximum of 20 vials of Thin Blood at a time. This number decreases on harder difficulties, so it makes a great challenge in terms of making sure you have enough Thin Blood on you to heal yourself, or use a power from your chosen smith. As for Garcian, as I mentioned before, his silenced pistol can't deal that much damage to enemies. His main draw is that he can revive fallen members. See, if you die as one of the Smith, you're forced to switch to Garcian, and you have to run all the way to the point where your character died, and then revive him in a quick resuscitation minigame before you can continue. Annoyingly, this may not be too much of a problem if your character dies early on in the level, but when it gets to a later point, it can be painful. Worse, Garcian and your chosen Smith, should you revive them, only respawn at save points, so if you haven't saved in a while and your character dies after progressing a certain way through the level, I hope you like the long trek back. Oh, and Harmon? He's the leader of the bunch. You know him well, he has a big-ass rifle that he fires rounds from, and he's only available at certain plot-critical moments. There's really not much to say about him. This is certainly some simple yet tight-paced and well-executed gameplay, as it offers a great variety of tools you can use to take out the smiles. When there are so many smiles on screen, it can get tough, but it is still so satisfying to execute them all, seeing them burst into little dots of blood. That being said, it is repetitive, and the combat doesn't really evolve from what it presents. If anything, as the game goes on, it gets fairly easy to just blast through the game, especially when you get all of the upgrades. Though if you want more of a challenge, there is a deadly difficulty option which does increase the difficulty in combat. Also, the aiming is a bit too clumsy for me, as movement is a little too slow and awkward, and after you fire a shot, the camera jolts a little bit upwards, which I find annoying, as I have to reposition the reticule back onto the target, or better yet, hit B to lock on, and then I fire a shot and it jolts upwards. It's so annoying! I guess that's one major advantage of playing the PC version with the mouse and keyboard, since the aiming is a lot smoother and more fluid. And yet, despite these flaws, it doesn't detract from my enjoyment of the gameplay. In a way, these controls are reminiscent of something like Resident Evil, with the tank movement and the fact that you can't move whilst aiming. However, since the movement controls are tied to only one button, and you're forced down these linear pathways, yes, it feels limiting, but the movement is so tight and snappy, it feels fun, and you don't feel like you're controlling a tank. In addition to the combat, you also have to solve some puzzles as well. And they're simple, easy to solve puzzles, even if they're quite bizarre in nature. All you do is search the environment for clues that'll help you find a weird object that you use to solve the puzzle, and then use it on the puzzle. Sometimes, the game will point out certain things that give you clues to solve the puzzle, like how in one chapter you have to pay attention to the bikini-clad girls on the poster, as they hold clues to a solution for a puzzle. Though oftentimes, you simply need to use a specific Smith member to do a thing, or use a photo in your inventory to access a new area in one instance, or even use an elemental ring. You get these rings from a headless girl named Susie, who has a few too many screws loose. And even though they all have differing elements to them, they're mostly used for puzzle solving, like how you need the time ring to wind back time to fix a structure that allows you to get a strange object, or fill a vase of flowers with water using the water ring, or starting up some windmills with the wind ring, or even set off a fire alarm with the fire ring. As such, the only ring that's worth a damn outside of puzzle solving is the stamina ring, as it greatly reduces the amount of damage you're dealt with when you get hit by a smile. There is a power ring as well, and it does increase the strength of your character, but I prefer the stamina ring as I feel safer wearing that. It's a shame that these rings aren't really used all that much throughout the game. I think they could have been useful in combat, like stunning enemies for a brief period with a blast of fire from the fire ring, for example. Fortunately, you're not alone with these puzzles, as there are certain characters known as Remnant Psyches, they're ghosts, who will help you out and tell you what you have to do, albeit in a cryptic way. You have Iwazaru, a man in a red gimp suit who gives hints and some lore info in the name of Harmon. And speaking of Harmon, if you skip any of these, you can always listen to them again in Harmon's room at any time. Travis Bell, who also gives hints and straight up expands more on the lore, plus he does pelvic thrusts at one point. And then there's Kikazaru, another gimp-suited figure, though this time in white, who highlights exactly where you need to go. Probably the biggest help in terms of puzzles is a ghost with a red mask known as Yoon Hyun. He'll offer advice on how to solve a puzzle, though only if you shoot his mask at the cost of some thick blood. Then he'll tell you how to solve the puzzle, although he does this whilst flipping you off. And when you do solve a puzzle, I love the little guitar piece that plays. It feels so satisfying to shake my head in time with the hand swipe. The levels are fairly big in size, and they're oftentimes labyrinthian in design, though you always have a map on you which you can activate with the X button. And it tells you what floor you're on, where exactly you need to go, where the Harmon's room are, and if there's save points or not, and even locations where you need to use a certain smith or where a soul bullet is. Yep, these little buggers are what you're mostly collecting in addition to those weird objects that are used on certain panels. There are a set amount of these to collect in each chapter, and you have to get all of them in order to pass the gate man so you can pass through the Vinculum gate. It can be frustrating if you don't have all of them and have to backtrack to find the remaining ones, but it is rewarding when you do find them all. As you pass through the Vinculum gate in its short, techno-laden corridor, you're led through a Colosseum where you are treated to a mini-boss with a special Heaven Smile, one that tests your skills and makes you feel tense as the smile does its thing against you. Unless you listen to this ghost kid, Kess Bloody Sunday, beforehand. Yes, that's his name. He was killed on a Sunday. He basically tells you how to defeat these monsters, so you have to pay attention to it. In doing so, these bosses become easy, though they can still present a tense, tough challenge. What's disappointing about these guys, though, is that once you've fought them here, they become regular enemies in later levels, so it does take away a bit from the challenge of when you first fight them. And that's basically the main gameplay loop. I can understand it when people say it's repetitive, as like the combat, the puzzles don't change so much as you progress through the game, though they most certainly gain points for the creativity and weirdness to them. I mean, you get a soul bullet by predicting the outcome of a horse race in one puzzle. How cool is that? The game's presentation is pretty much the contributing factor in showcasing the surreal aspects of the game. It employs the usage of cel shading for its characters and environments, though much like fellow contemporary Capcom 5 game Beautiful Joe, it utilizes deep shading within the environments and especially the characters. Unlike the aforementioned game, however, Killer7 goes for a bit more of a realistic style in reflection of its more mature storyline and elements of film noir in its style. It does create the impression that you're experiencing a gritty Technicolor urban manga come to life. And holy shit, you'll be seeing a lot of colour throughout this game, though you'll mostly be seeing red when the smileys burst into small red particles whenever you kill them. Yes, it's supposed to be blood, but it's still a neat little way to show this depiction of blood. All of the environments carry their own usages of colour in order to give the environment its own distinct character to it. There's the cold metallic nature of the interior of the Kaku building, which granted looks boring, but it gives the place a cold tactile feel to it. Or how about Almeida City, with its more bright pastel colours that are punctuated by the bright sunny setting? The Dominican Republic in particular uses white on most of the environment to symbolise the city being represented by light, along with its summertime setting and feel, although it also brilliantly uses the darkness inside the church to brilliantly have the light shine through, adding to the serenity. The best usage of colour within the environments is ISZK Land, the amusement park in the third chapter, as it uses the colours to not only contrast the dark lighting and nighttime setting to play up the dark, foreboding nature of the chapter, but also to enhance the surreal designs, appropriate since this is an amusement park I am talking about. Of course, I love the character designs as well. They're mostly simplistic and use one colour for their design, though they're all varied in the type of character they want to show. Dan dresses in a suit, but he keeps his blazer unbuttoned to show his casual crass style, as opposed to Garcian, who keeps his blazer buttoned up as he's more formal. Kaide has her bloodstained dress that showcases a reserved personality hiding the lust for blood. Coyote has colourful Hawaiian shirts that boldly show his colourful profession. Mask in particular has a wide variety of costumes, and he can upgrade these costumes throughout the game, which enhances combat abilities and firing rates. But his costumes are flashy and loud, befitting of the lucha libre wrestler that he is. All of this is to say that the environments and the characters all have their own unique style and voice to them that successfully conveys who they are and what they want to be. I should also point out as well that on GameCube, the game runs at a rock-solid 30 FPS at all times, although I did notice a rare hiccup at one point. Since it didn't occur again after that point, it didn't hinder on my overall experience. Meanwhile, the music is eclectic as ever, and further helps the surrealism of the game. Helmed by acclaimed composers Masafumi Takada and Jun Fukuda, the score goes for a wide variety of styles, again helping convey the level or the character's mood and feelings. One moment you could be hearing acid jazz, next minute you'll get a melancholic piano piece, then you'll get some random guitar twangs or a little piece of nightmare fuel in audio form, or even a legally distinct cover of the song Grasshopper by British rock band Ride at the end. Yes, really. They're all really fun to listen to, and the wide variety of styles give the soundtrack a varied affair to it, as though it just loaded up multiple genres of music onto its smartphone and hit shuffle. Given at least the primary composer for the soundtrack, one can easily see the influence of this game's soundtrack bleeding into another Takada Helm soundtrack, that being the soundtrack to the Danganronpa franchise, as it too employs the mixture of songs within different genres, yet it sounds amazing and contributes to the uneasy surreal atmosphere of that game's universe. Finally, this game has some of the best voice acting I've ever listened to from any of Grasshopper's games. There are a bunch of amazing talent who contribute vocals to the game, from the likes of Michael Goff to Greg Eagles to Tara Strong, to even the likes of Dwight Schultz and the late Joe Lala. They all perfectly portray the characters they're voicing and bring life to these wonderful characters. Of course, there are some voice actors who do more than one voice, presumably since the recording group only had a limited pool of talent they could choose from, and with the constrained budget, they had to make do with what talent they had. This is especially notable with Steve Bloom. You might recognize him as Spike Spiegel from Cowboy Bebop amongst many other things. Here, he does a lot of voices for a number of this game's characters. One hopes his throat managed to survive all of his voice work, but thanks to his great talent, his characters are all voiced well and convey their personalities and attitudes very well. But there's only so many times one can listen to his voice in one game. And again, it's not a bad thing thanks to his great performances. It would have been nice to have a bit of variety here and there. Like, for example, having one lovely lady towards the end being voiced by Jennifer Hale. Also, considering Grasshopper's previous effort, Michigan Report from Hell, had a notably atrocious English dub, hearing this game's voice acting is a massive step up in quality. In stark contrast to the simplistic gameplay, this game's story is absolutely complex, and it will massively fuck with your brain and take you for a serious ride as you progress throughout the game. But what exactly is the story? Well, it may seem simple on the surface. It is a time of peace. There is a ban on all air travel as well as the usage of mobile phones. Also, research on nuclear weapons was banned, and all nuclear waste was disposed in a landmass near the Gibsoft Islands. In an effort to bring peace to the world, the United States government cooperated with Japan to bring this dream to reality. This included building a bridge that connected the two countries together, and launching missiles into the sky that upon colliding with each other, create an explosion reminiscent of fireworks. Everyone across the world gathered to watch these dazzling light shows with wonder and awe. The world was filled with hope, until an explosion happened at the UN press conference where a peace treaty was to be signed. This attack was caused by a terrorist group known as Heaven Smile, which exists to create terror for the sake of creating terror. As fear and panic began to spread throughout the world, the US government had no other option but to call upon the almost godlike omniscient assassins known only as Killer7 to deal with the problem. So basically, terrorists are taking over the world, we go stop them, right? As I said back in my Capcom 5 video, what I may have explained sounds simple enough, but trust me, the further you go in this game, you'll realize how fucking insane this story gets. Although this shouldn't come as much of a surprise, given as how this is supposed to be a surreal game designed by a lunatic. The story touches upon a number of themes as it goes on, from political tensions between America and Japan, the futility of war, much darker themes of organ donation and murder, a cult of fanatics, and many more. And much like the soundtrack, it feels like a bizarre mashup of various ideas, but they all blend together with strong writing that it helps elevate the story into being something amazing. Actually, the unique thing about each chapter is that they all feel distinct in how it wants to tell that particular part of the story. Each chapter contains its own standalone story that certainly excites as much as they confuse, and they all paint their pictures with the help of the environments and music, and how they all add to the vibe and feel of the chapter. The fact that each chapter tells its own story, however, makes them feel disconnected and disjointed to the overall plot, though this was most likely the point to add to the surrealism and to keep players guessing about where exactly the plot could possibly go. Still, through these individual stories, they're all engaging and absolutely batshit that it's worth experiencing them through to the end. The game is divided into 7 chapters. The first one, Angel, introduces us to the world and the characters, and gives you a good preview on how insane the game's world is. I should mention here that you can collect these letters from these courier pigeons scattered throughout some of the levels. These letters are written by a sick bastard known as Johnny Gagnon, and he basically explains some more details about the characters and the world, at least from his perspective. Anyway, this chapter also brings us some shocking moments, like the death of the punks and the boss battle with the Angel at the end. She serves as a great way to showcase the antagonist Kun Lan's manipulative behaviour, as she is nothing more than an astral projection of which Kun uses to fuck with the assassins. Speaking of the boss battles, they're all unique and varied, and you'll never expect how exactly the boss will play out. They each employ a completely different style, slight twist on the gameplay to keep players on their toes. They're thrilling and fun, though also a bit anticlimactic as they don't pose too much of a challenge. Well, for me anyway, thanks to my years of playing this game and having all of my smiths be leveled up high. I'm sure first-time players would be a bit stumped on what to do, unless they listen to the aforementioned Kest Bloody Sunday beforehand. The game's next chapter, Sunset, really gets the ball rolling. Despite each chapter being different in terms of tone, feel, and style, they all have familiar elements to them in order for players to feel connected. Each chapter starts with Garcian getting his assignment from Harmon, and his maid Samantha, who abuses Harmon until the lights turn on. Then he meets his informant, Christopher Mills, on the overpass, where he gets a little more information on who exactly his target is. And before the boss battle of the level, you have to travel through the Vinculum Gate and then fight a random smile at the end. Anyway, in Sunset's case, it's all about how the Americans have retaliated against Japan by firing missiles at them. Meanwhile, there's a document known as the Yakumo that grants the owner of the document unlimited power with which they can control the world. One piece of the document has been hidden inside the restaurant owned by a Toru Fukushima, so we have to kill him. Some of the levels do drag on for a good while as they are split into 2 parts, with this level being one of them. That doesn't stop them from furthering the entertainment and insanity by providing us with brilliant moments. We have a brief moment with a chef who fires a round at Mask, who retaliates by headbutting the bullet. Surely that's enough to sell you on the sheer ludicrousness of the moment. Later, we investigate the Kaku building, which plays host to one of the game's more iconic moments, the Mahjong scene, as it perfectly symbolizes the futility of the conflict between America and Japan, and how simple negotiations can be destroyed with one simple mistake. There's also a scene at the beginning of this chapter that shows Kun Lan being cunning, as he uses his glowing hand of power to give local Japanese politician Kenjiro Matsuoka, or Matsuken, a chance to give him all the power he craves, despite earlier being verbally abused by 2 disillusioned old political farts. If anything, it makes us all the more determined to take them out. It's a somber chapter, melancholic even, before becoming cold and stern later on, and it does a great job of keeping the players on edge. The next few chapters decide to take a turn for the bizarre, as they function as excellent, if strange, standalone stories. Though this turn for the strange does come at the cost of brazenly abandoning certain plot points like the Yakumo, at least after this next chapter, and even having Kun Lan sit out of the game for a good while. A shame, as his twisted, scheming antics are a part of what makes him so enjoyable, another part being his infectious laughter. Cloudman follows the happenings of a cult who serve their god, Andre Almeida, a man who somehow managed to obtain a piece of the Yokomor document and used his know-how to start his own company, First Life Inc. This power also led him to get a bit drunk with power, leading him to start his own cult based in his city, Almeida City in Texas. This chapter is a more free-spirited, maniacal chapter, and Andre himself personifies this brilliantly, as he's goofy, eccentric, and oodles of fun to just watch. I mean, the guy introduces himself to us by criticizing the people who idolize and fetishize young idol talents before the building explodes because guess what? She's a smile in disguise! It's a funny moment, but it perfectly sets the tone for the chapter. It gets more tearful by the end, as Andre wants us to kill him because he's afraid of becoming a smile after deliberately infecting himself to create vaccines for his followers, at least before he ends up transforming into one. Major points to him for his bravery, and it certainly helps to sympathize with the sad clown who just wants to do good for his followers. One thing I should point out is that in a nice little bit of symbolism between the East and the West, some of the game's cutscenes employ different art styles from different sides of the world. Cloudman, for instance, goes for a flash animation style look with detailed shading that makes the characters look extra creepy, while the cutscenes in Sunset go for a traditional anime style from the lads at Zebek. It's a nice little break from the in-engine cutscenes, although they still look just as good as these animated cutscenes. Encounter, meanwhile, shows how far the game will go in displaying graphic content. I mean, this isn't the game's darkest chapter for nothing. It tells the dark tale of a silver-haired old man named Curtis Blackburn, a devil in the guise of an assassin, who kidnaps then sells the organs of young girls on the black market. He also has his accomplice, Pedro Montana, who does the same thing, albeit with young boys, and has trained Dan Smith to be his apprentice. Of course, he continues his work throughout the chapter, though with Dan being dead, and Pedro having previously sold him out, Curtis is looking for revenge. Like Andre, Curtis's intro is perfect in showcasing how much of a monster he is, as he calmly walks through the building to stylish jazz music before mowing down all but one of the people inside the building without any hesitation. The one girl he does spare at the end, he turns her into a magical anime girl assassin in order to appease his fetishes. Yes, really. It succeeds in making us want to take out this brutal beast. Hell, even Garcian agrees this is fucked up, even by his standards. Later on, Curtis's meeting with Pedro shows us just how brutal the game can get. That whole scene is tense, as Curtis's raspy demonic voice details all of the horrible things he did to Pedro's wife and children, before he throws down the head of one of Pedro's kids, Mary, and then guns him down in cold blood. It's pure, unfiltered nightmare fuel in living cutscene form, and it furthers just how low Curtis can go with his lust for vengeance. The duel between Dan and Curtis at the end is tense. The cutscene preceding the duel showcases Dan at his best in terms of his character, being a crass, tough, shit-talking person who doesn't take shit from the raspy-voiced, sharp-tongued fox he's facing off against. Once the duel is over, the ending is so cathartic, finally seeing Curtis getting exactly what he deserves for all the crimes he's committed, and his death is brutal as it is scary. So it's saying something that the next chapter, Alter Ego, is a sharp left turn back into light-hearted fun. Also, this chapter has animated cutscenes done by Zebek, much like Sunset. In this chapter, a bunch of Super Sentai heroes known as the Handsome Men assassinate a man known as Steve Thunderson, and their kill is mirrored in the online game, let alone the comic book they originate from. Also, they're coming for the Killer7 next, so we have to kill the comic artist Trevor Pearl Harbor, yes that's his name, in his studio within the Dominican Republic. I love this chapter. It feels relaxing and summery with the bright scenery and the beautiful music, and the old vibes, especially inside the church, give it a grand ancient feel, yet still retaining its beauty. Though it's also loud and boisterous once the Handsome Men show up, appropriate given as this is a parody of traditional tokusatsu shows, or Power Rangers for a more western equivalent. It's fun, and the duel with the Punishing Rangers at the end is bizarre but awesome. Smile brings the story back on track, though it brazenly introduces a whole bunch of brand new plot points all at once, and it feels too overwhelming. Samantha's dead. Harmon killed her. Garcian and Mills have a new car. Mills is dead. Garcian battles through a hotel to learn the truth before he's told to fuck off. Garcian goes to school where he learns he's the reincarnation of a young assassin called Emir Parkreiner, who killed 6 people in a hotel ages ago. Garcian participates in a game of Russian roulette and wins. Garcian kills the principal of the school. He then goes back to the hotel and relives all of his repressed memories before finally shooting his younger self in the third eye. It's all too much to take in all at once, and these sudden reveals leave one confuddled and fucked up. Though the last scene where Garcian breaks down into tears on the roof is powerful and somber. We've seen this professional, no-nonsense man go through all the weird shit the game has thrown at him, and seeing him break down upon learning all of the Smiths were actually his repressed personalities and not the ones of Harmon is certainly a shocking twist that is punctuated by a beautiful moment. I felt bad for poor Garcia at the end. I just really wanted to give him a nice warm cup of coffee and a plate of donuts for everything he's been through. This chapter also discusses more on the politics, as well as discussing what the real point of the conflict is and why it's happening. The best summation of this pointlessness is Garcian's conversation with Motzkin before he takes out the principal. He asks, "What is United States? What is the purpose of the president?" But Motzkin simply brushes him off with a non-answer. If anything, I felt that it best represented the distrust these two sides have, and how Garcian doesn't really have any clue as to which side he should be supporting. Also, somehow the presidents of the US are decided by votes that occur inside this school, and whoever becomes Education Ministry becomes president? I'm sorry, dear viewer. These plot points kinda confuse me so much, I'm having trouble trying to explain all this, even though I was still engaged with the story, just don't get me wrong. Finally, the game's last chapter, Lion, is a denouement chapter, notable for having a sadistic choice where you either kill or spare Motzkin. The difference between the two options is which country wins the war. What it essentially boils down to is who do you side with in this conflict, Japan or the US? It's a strange but awesome closing chapter, as while it doesn't expand on everything that the previous chapter suddenly dumped on us, it does try to wrap things up in a neat little bow. Overall, this is an amazing game, one that has still stood the test of time over 2 decades later. Its gameplay is nothing short of unique, being simple but unconventional and engaging all at the same time. And its story is a massive mindfuck this side of Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty that still intrigues as much as it baffles and confuses. And its presentation still stands tall, with its amazing design, visuals, music, voice acting, and stylish UI. That being said, this is not a game for everyone, as one can easily be turned off by everything that makes this game a one-of-a-kind experience. Maybe you won't understand the symbolism and significance in the themes and the events amidst the bizarre imagery. And towards the end, the story can get really confusing with the sudden plot dumps all at once, so I'll say approach with caution if you want to play this game. Finally, this game has a bit of replay value. Once you beat the game on either difficulty, you unlock Killer 8 mode, which is the same as before, except the enemies are a lot stronger, and all their weak points are disabled. Fortunately for you, you get to play as the young Harmon Smith. While he doesn't require upgrades, his Tommy gun with its insane rate of fire and infinite ammo, topped off with his good health count, make him essential to simply survive this mode. Once you've beaten Killer 8, you unlock Hopper 7, where all of the enemies are replaced with silly men in grasshopper suits. Also, they all die in one hit. The only caveat is that the first chapter, Angel, is the only chapter you can play in this mode, so it's really only here for shits and giggles. So what exactly happened afterwards? Well, despite the game not selling very well, around 15,000 copies in its lifetime, and despite the divisive critical reception it accrued, over the years, the game received a massive cult following, and it managed to give Goichi Suda not just more recognition within Japan, but also some well-earned recognition in the West. This following allowed his past games like Flower, Sun and Rain to come over to the West, and it also paved the way for future titles such as Shadows of the Damned, Lollipop Chainsaw, Killer is Dead, Short Piece Rankle Skikime's Longest Day, and of course, the punk-infused insanity that is the No More Heroes franchise, all of which have endured lasting recognition to this day. He's even working on a new game called Hotel Barcelona, in collaboration with Hidetaka Suehiro, aka Swery65, the same guy behind Deadly Premonition. I believe it'll be launching at some point in the future, so check it out if you can. Furthermore, this game hasn't been re-released outside of the PC port, and with the GameCube app existing for the recently launched Nintendo Switch 2, just saying, fellas. I've got nothing more to say, so I have one final request. Dear Suda-san, please let me do voice work for your next big game. I'll pay you with my liver and my heart. Hey there everybody, don't forget to like the video and comment on it. If you want to keep up to date with all of my videos, click that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. Share this video around where you can, and follow me on socials with the links below.